I've never been the type of person who scares easily. I'm 32, I work as a freelance data analyst, and I spend most of my days in front of a laptop with too many tabs open and too much coffee in my system. I live alone in a small third-floor apartment in Columbus. Nothing fancy, just quiet. I've always liked quiet. I grew up as an only child, and the stillness of a room never felt threatening to me until that night. This happened in November 2025, on a Wednesday that was supposed to be uneventful. I had been working late on a client report when the crypto markets started tanking. My phone lit up with alerts. BTC down 11% in 5 minutes. Flash crash in progress. Major liquidations. Even though I wasn't trading that night, I had a habit of watching market movements, almost like someone who checks the weather, even when they're not going outside. So I had a live stream open on my second monitor, commentators scrambling to understand if the plunge was a glitch or a genuine crash. It was almost midnight when I decided to take a break. I stretched, shut off the monitor with the chaotic red candles, and stood up to clear my head. Normally, nights like that were just noise, numbers on a screen, volatility doing what volatility does. But that night, as I stood in the doorway of my dim hallway, I felt something I hadn't felt since I was a kid, walking home alone in the dark. A strange, sudden awareness that I wasn't as alone as I thought. The day leading up to it had been painfully average. I woke up around 9, answered a few routine emails, and worked through a backlog of spreadsheets. Around lunchtime, I walked to the corner store for a sandwich and an energy drink. The cashier recognized me and joked that I practically lived there at this point. I laughed, embarrassed but not enough to change my habits. The weather had been cold but clear, that kind of early winter crispness where you can see your breath even in the afternoon. I went home, put on a lo-fi playlist and sank back into work. Nothing dramatic, no bad feelings, no premonitions. Just the kind of monotony that makes days blur together. By the time the evening news started mentioning the Bitcoin drop, I wasn't surprised. Markets had been shaky for days, and people were panicking on social media. Some of my friends from an old crypto Discord server were messaging me frantically about liquidations. I typed a few responses, nothing reassuring, nothing dramatic, and muted the chat. Around 10, I heated up leftover pasta, ate half of it directly from the pot, a habit I'm not proud of, and continued marking anomalies in a data set for a client. At some point, I glanced out the window. The street below was unusually empty, not eerie, just calm. A bus passed. A couple walked by holding takeout bags. Normal things. When I took my trash out around 11:30, the hallway lights flickered, which they had been doing for months. The building was old, the landlord slower than a glacier. I rolled my eyes, tossed the bag and went back in. Looking back, that might have been the moment the night actually started. Not the crash, not the live stream, but that quiet walk back to my door, where I first noticed the faint scent of cigarette smoke in a building where absolutely no one smoked. When I stepped back inside my apartment, the smell wasn't there. It lingered only in the hallway, faint but noticeable. I chalked it up to someone breaking the no-smoking rule, or maybe a neighbor's visitor stepping out for a quick puff. Annoying, but not strange enough to think about twice. I closed the door, locked it out of habit, and went back to my desk to finish a last round of edits before bed. That's when I noticed my phone light up with another crypto alert. Bitcoin down almost 19% in less than an hour. The live stream was frantic now, chat scrolling at the speed of light. Some people were joking, some were panicking, some were accusing the government or whales or bots. I had the audio off, but the movement on the screen felt chaotic enough to be distracting. I turned off the stream completely, deciding to watch a comfort YouTuber instead while I worked. But before the next video could load, I heard something soft, like a dull tap. Not inside, not exactly outside, more like in the wall. I paused, listening. Nothing. I shrugged it off as pipes. The building made random noises all the time, but a few minutes later it came again. A slower, dragging sound, like someone running a hand across drywall. I froze, fingers hovering over my keyboard. The noise seemed to come from the wall behind my monitor, the wall that separated my apartment from the hallway, except no apartment shared that wall. It bordered the staircase and a small storage room that was kept locked. I muted my speakers and listened again. Silence. It was probably the wind, or settling, or the heating system kicking on. I tried to convince myself of all of those things, and for a while it worked. I went back to work, finished everything by midnight, and closed my laptop. Then the tapping returned just once, almost like someone gently knocking, testing to see if anyone would answer. That time I didn't brush it off so easily. I stood up slowly, not sure why I felt the need to move quietly in my own home. The air felt heavier, like the temperature had dropped a degree or two. I walked closer to the wall and pressed my ear against it. Nothing, not even hallway noise. I stepped away, shook it off, and went to the bathroom to wash up. But as I dried my hands, I heard something else, this time unmistakable. The faint creak of a footstep coming from the hallway right outside my door. My building had carpeted hallways. You weren't supposed to hear footsteps that clearly. Another step. This one slower. My stomach tightened. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a neighbor had come home late. Maybe someone dropped something. But the feeling that washed over me was different, an instinctive wrongness that I couldn't explain. I walked to the peephole and looked through. At first I saw nothing, just the empty hallway lit by that flickering yellow bulb. But after a few seconds, I noticed movement in my peripheral vision. Someone was standing just out of view. Close, too close. I held my breath, waiting. A shadow shifted slightly on the carpet, a shoe, black, motionless, as if the person was deliberately staying off-center from my door. I whispered to myself, "What the hell?" The person didn't move. They didn't knock. They didn't speak. They just stood there, angled away from the peephole, but close enough that I could see the tip of their boot. I stepped back quietly. My heart was pounding now. The crypto alerts on my phone kept buzzing every few minutes. Bitcoin in free fall, more panic, more chaos. But all of that felt distant compared to the icy dread filling my apartment. I waited 5 minutes. 10. Nothing. No more footsteps. No knock. No sound. Eventually, I convinced myself the person had left. I would later find out how wrong I was. I tried to go to bed, but every time I closed my eyes, I pictured that unmoving boot just out of sight. After half an hour of tossing and turning, I decided to do one more check through the peephole, just to calm my nerves. I padded quietly to the door and leaned in. The hallway looked empty again. The flickering light buzzed softly, and nothing seemed out of place. I started to relax until I saw it. A small piece of white paper was sticking out from underneath my door. I hadn't heard anything slide it in. I stared at it for a long moment before slowly kneeling and pulling it toward me. The paper was folded in half. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Inside, in small, cramped handwriting, were 5 words. "I know you're still awake." My throat went dry. I didn't recognize the handwriting. I didn't know anyone in the building well enough for pranks, and the wording wasn't playful. It felt watchful, intentional. I backed away from the door, grabbed my phone, and debated calling 911. But what would I say? That someone left a note, that I heard footsteps. I didn't even know if the person was still out there. As I stood frozen, trying to decide, I heard it, a whisper, right outside the door, so faint I almost mistook it for breathing. "Open it!" My blood turned cold. I stumbled backward, knocking into the wall. The whisper came again, slightly louder, still muffled through the door. "Open the door!" I shook my head even though they couldn't see me. My voice cracked. "Go away." Silence followed, heavy, and then a slow drag of something metallic across the door, not scratching, sliding, testing. I realized then, with an awful clarity, that whoever was out there didn't want to talk. They wanted inside. I didn't remember dialing 911. My hands must have done it before my brain caught up. I whispered to the operator what was happening and stayed on the line, crouched on the floor, shaking uncontrollably. The whispering stopped. The metal sound stopped. For a few long minutes there was nothing. Then I heard quick, heavy footsteps running down the hallway, away from my apartment. By the time police arrived, the hallway was empty. No footprints, no sign of forced entry, no cigarette smell. Just the note, which they took but didn't seem particularly concerned about. One officer suggested it might have been a weird neighbor or someone drunk. Another said, "Sometimes people mess with each other during big news events," which made no sense, but I was too exhausted to argue. I slept with the lights on for a week. I changed my lock. I installed a camera above my door. But the feeling of being watched lingered long after the night ended. Bitcoin recovered. I didn't. It's been almost a year, and I still check the hallway camera every night before bed. Nothing unusual has ever shown up. No suspicious figures, no late-night footsteps, no notes, except one. About 3 months after the incident, at exactly 11:33 p.m., the same time the crash started, I received a motion alert on my phone. The camera recorded a single frame of video before glitching, a blurry silhouette standing directly in front of my door. And in the corner of the frame, on the floor, a small white piece of paper,